Okay, this is Danny, this is Larry, and this is Louie. I don't know if you can see Louie. Come here, Louie. You're such a good-looking pup. Let's see, get you on camera. There we go. And this is their roadmap to success. Basically, like I said in the video above, Larry just came into the house yesterday. Now, Danny has some dog aggression-related issues, but the Guardian did a really good job of introducing them. And aside from when he's doing things that she disagrees with, where she barks at him, they're getting along famously. The puppy here decided to do that on cue. Louie. Well, actually, this is a good opportunity. We'll make this a learning and teachable deal. So if you don't want your dog on the furniture, what you can do is do this, toss a treat on the ground. When he gets it, we say the word off. And then we prefer not to have him on here. So make sure we disagree right away. For dogs, they learn through association, repetition, and good timing. You have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to have the ability to make the connection sit. So that's passive training. We'll talk about that in a sec. So if he gets up here and we don't react within 3 seconds, then he thinks we're cool with him being up on the table. So we need to make sure we're on that right away. The dogs, really don't have a lot of problems, except for they didn't have a lot of rules or structure, and so I think they were confused as to where their position was. These two dogs, Larry is just kind of figuring it out. We're still kind of identifying what his personality is. But basically, to reinforce a healthy leader-follower dynamic, I went over some rules the Guardians can incorporate. Danny actually splits time between this household and another household. And it'd be helpful if the dog has the same rules in both places. Otherwise, it kind of undoes what she learns here when she goes to the other location, and just is a little confusing for her. So some of the rules we went over is, one of the rules would be to not allow the dogs on the furniture for a 30-day period of time, or as long as the problems that are at hand are still going on, because for dogs, the higher they sit, the more rank or social status they have. Now, if the dog gets on the couch, we do the same thing I just showed you with the table, throw a treat on the ground, the dog licks it up, we say the word off to put it in context. And we might want to get some X mats so that when we're not in the room or when they're gone, the other two dogs don't practice going up here. Now, at the same time, anytime I take away the furniture, I always like to give the dog a designated place to go. So I showed the Guardian how to basically, it's a similar version of what we did in the video above this on the kennel training, but I would recommend the Guardian get a dog bed. Now, I like dog beds that are kind of shaped like a cushion like this, not like a duvet cover. Because if it's like this, there could be, a treat could be in a crevice and you wouldn't necessarily see it. So you want not a pattern. You want a dog bed that's going to be like a light color, like a light cream, a light white, or if you were gray, that would be perfect. It would be a perfect analogy. But those are the 3 colors I like, and no pattern, because their eyes are not very good for detail, and the treat can get lost. Now, what I like to do is, or where I prefer to get them is Groupon. I find the cheapest to go on Groupon. And again, I like the ones that are just like a cushion without. Some of them have like a simulated back and sides that's designed to emulate a human couch, but dogs don't ever lean against their back. So if you were to ask me what my dogs can do to make me happy, seeing all 4 of my dogs sleep together on the dog bed makes me happy. So yeah, you're breaking the rule, but we'll get to that later. So I would put a dog bed right here in front of, underneath the TV. I would put, and then come up with a unique name for that one as well. Then we have the little covey to the left, and that's going to be Danny's space, which we're calling, I forgot?
The Palace.
Palace. And we're calling the crate, we're calling it cave. And again, fun command words. Dogs can read your human facial expression. If you say a command, if you say cave and the dog goes in there and people laugh and chuckle, it makes the dog feel good about going in there, which is more motivation for them to go in there. So the way that I do that is, like I talked about in the video above, but for the dog bed, just toss the treat on the dog bed. When the dog licks it up, say the word beach or Cabo or whatever you want to say for the dog bed. I prefer to get the dog beds on Groupon. There we go, buddy. Now, if I give him a treat each time he does that, it's just going to train him to continue going off. So I just give him a little bit of nudge, but I did it right away. Groupon, I find, is the cheapest place to get dog beds. They take a little bit longer, but they're just cheaper. Okay, so other rules, the dog has to sit before I let it in or out the door. I go to the door, I say sit once. If it doesn't sit within 3 seconds, I walk away, sit down, wait 1 minute, and then go back and repeat the process. Keep on doing that until when I go and say sit, the dog sits, and then as soon as it sits, I open the door. So the reward is getting to go outside, and the dog, in order to achieve that, has to do something for me first, which is sitting, which is, again, a more subordinate position. Don't yawn too much, it'll make me yawn. Let me see. Do it and keep on doubling the length of time. So first you walk away for 1 minute, then 2 minutes, then 4 minutes, then 8 minutes, and eventually as soon as the dog sits, you let him out. Eventually, the dog will sit at the door as its way of indicating it wants to go out. Right now, they stand at the door and stare at it or ring the doorbell. But eventually, they'll just go sit at the door, which is a nice visual cue. Eventually, do it with both directions. But start off with whatever direction the dogs want. If the dog's motivated to come inside, start with them outside. Otherwise, you don't have any leverage. Another rule would be not to allow the dogs to be within 7 feet of a human who's eating. So if a human is eating here at this table, then I would say that no dogs are allowed to come in this little L-shaped area. So that way the human can have a little bit of personal space. Also, don't feed them any people food. That trains them to invade your personal space, which is something they know that they shouldn't do. For dogs, they don't get within 7 feet of someone who has a high-value item like a bone or food or cow's cheek or whatever it is. So the more that we can actually help the dog practice keeping its own boundaries will help. That self-control will help in other avenues as well. But at first they're going to try to do it left and right. So we're going to use those escalating consequences I went over, specifically the third one, or the first one and the third one. Well, actually the first, second, and third. Hiss when the dog's approaching, stand up if it gets too close, march towards it if it breaks the boundary. If you forget how to do the escalating consequences, message me. I have videos I can share with you that go through them in detail. Other rules, not being allowed in the kitchen when we're preparing food. We're going to use that third escalating consequence to move the dog out. Now, people are always asking me, how do I keep the dog out of the kitchen when I'm cooking? Because I'm distracted. I'm thinking about the ingredients. Well, what I like to do is we have a professional baseball player that lives here. And so what we like to do is the same thing he does, is practice. So we do a warm-up swing before we actually take our actual cuts. Well, we can do the same thing for cooking. So when we're cooking, we're thinking about the ingredients and everything else we're doing, and so we're distracted. So what we can do instead is simulate cooking. Get a piece of bacon, microwave it, and then put it out on the counter. The dog's going to smell that, and it's going to attract the dog to come in, and then you pretend like you're cooking, and as soon as the dog crosses or approaches the boundary, you hiss. Once you cross the boundary, you march towards it, and you stop moving forward at the point at wherever the invisible line is. The dog's going to try to go here multiple times. It's probably going to try to go around this way because there's a work island, and going back and forth, and you just have to beat the dog to the punch. Now, it's easiest to do this when you do this with one dog at a time. I know there's 3 dogs that live here, but Danni, when she shares time, that would be a great time to practice with the other 2 dogs. Put one of the dogs outside and practice one at a time. Once the dog knows how to do it on its own, then you can bring your 2 best dogs together and help them practice together, then all 3 dogs together. But always make it easier on yourself because you'll just move a lot faster and you won't be as frustrated. So again, you can microwave that and then pretend like you're turning the stove on and stirring stuff. And then as soon as the dog sits or lies down beyond the line or loses interest, then you put your bacon away and you actually start your actual cooking. I do the same thing for eating here. Instead of actually eating right away, I might get a piece of roast beef, microwave it, sit down and pretend like I'm cutting it up like I would for a real meal. And if the dog comes towards me, I stop what I'm doing and I address the dog by using that third escalating consequence. When we're actually cooking, we have to pay attention to the ingredients and the order, otherwise we're going to ruin the meal. When we're eating, we're wanting to put the food into us, and we create that frustration when we have to disagree with the dog. Most people don't actually teach the dogs how they want them to behave. So recreating a situation where the dog has failed, breaking it down into individual steps and helping the dog practice the first step over and over again in the easiest capacity possible. Then we go to the second step and then the third step. Once we've done all 8 steps or how many steps there are, then we come back and we do them all together, one at a time, in the easiest capacity possible. Then we start making it more and more difficult. We work our way back to the real world situation. That way we teach the dog how to do what we want to do in the easy capacity. And then eventually when we have guests come over and the dogs are sitting over there not trying to cost the guest, you're like, I've already used this joke once, but they're like, why are your dogs behaving so well? They're like, well, we had David and Doggone Problems come and they showed us how to establish boundaries. Practice this. We have 2 kids that live in the house, so they should have snacks here, and that gives us a good opportunity to practice during snack time as opposed to a real meal time because you can interrupt a snack just as easily. Let me see, what else did we go over? We went over petting with a purpose and passive training. To summate really quick, summation is petting with a purpose is not petting the dog when it demands attention, instead giving the dog a counter order, telling it to sit or lay down or do something, and then petting it. Now when a dog sits or when you're petting it, try to pet it under its chin if all things are equal. You can scratch its butt and its sides everywhere else. The one place you never want to pat is on top of the head because that creates a down nose orientation and insecure dogs look down. I prefer to pet a dog under the chin so it has its nose up in the air and feels good about itself for doing things that we want it to do. So that's petting with a purpose, and even if you want to pet the dog, still ask the dog to sit before you pet it. And then say just the command word. Don't say good, sit, sit. Or the dog's name, just say, you could say the dog's name, but I would prefer just to say just the command word. Now that, and I also use paycheck as a watchword. So if somebody comes to the room and sees I'm petting a dog that's standing, they might suspect that I've forgotten that pet with a purpose. So they'd say paycheck. That means I stop petting, tell the dog to sit. When it sits, I pet her under the chin, and then say I asked Danny to sit before you came in the room, and she stood up when you walked in, and I continued petting, and David said it's a lot, which it is. But you won't realize how often you're petting without a purpose. The other flip side of that is what I call passive training, which I'm going to show you here. Well, I was going to show you in a minute, but I can't influence passive training. Passive training is waiting for the dogs to do something on their own accord without any influence. He's trying to think about getting out back on the table. Now, if he were to come over here, I would have petted him and said the word come. I didn't ask him to come, but I still come as a command word that I like him to follow. So if every time he comes to me, I pet him and say come, well, that's the end result of what I'm looking for. Then when he's out in the yard and he's not, and I ask him to come, he's much more inclined to come to me because he's practiced getting a reward for doing that. And we take out the baggage. Like a lot of times you're like, come. The dog's like, no. If I come to you, then I'm listening to you and you're in charge. So I just wait for the dog to do it on their own and just reward them. So every time the dog sits, pet it and say sit. Every time it lays down, pet it and say crash. If the dog goes up there, then we're going to say, I can't remember that one.
Palace. You're the one who created it.
So that way we can help the dog understand, and we create a vocabulary which makes it easier for them to understand and do those command words. Most of us train our dogs to misbehave. The dog steals remote control or barks or jumps up, and we immediately correct them and chastise them. For dogs, any attention is validating. So they would rather get yelled at than be ignored. We would rather be ignored. So if the dog steals remote control, we get up and chase it, we chastise and get mad at the dog, well, it still got your attention. That was the whole goal. So now we're going to start petting with a purpose and using passive training by petting the dogs when they do things that we want on their own organically. That's for passive training, which is right here. Come. So he wasn't coming for me, he was coming for the donut. But he did come in the same area that I was, and I'm rewarding him for it. The more we do that, the easier it is for him to do that. Now, I come up with a word for this. I usually say recognize, testify, reward, something like that. So if the dog came up to me and I missed it, somebody could tell me recognize, I just turn, whatever the dog's doing, I just narrate. If it's standing there, I assume it came and pet it and say come. If it's sitting, pet it and say sit or crash if it's laying down, whatever it is. If you get in the habit of petting with a purpose and passively training your dog, it'll take about a month, but after a month you'll do it without even thinking, and then every time you pet your dog, it becomes a micro training session that you do without being aware of the fact that you're even doing it. Really becomes a gift. Name all of your toys. The guardian had done this already with Danny, but she might want to do it with the other two dogs as well, so that way you say green snake, the dog knows what to go get. Prefer one-word commands, but you can get away with it a little bit. Just the more words we use, the harder it is for dogs to understand. Try to avoid saying the same command word over and over again. I say it a maximum of 3 times. If I want the dog to come to me, I would say maybe come. Okay, dog didn't come. So I might add a little sugar to my voice, go, come. That didn't work? Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do is use a little body mechanic. The lower your hand goes, the more it's for the dog. And then when he goes where you want, I raise it over his head to put him in a sit. He didn't do this earlier either. There we go. Well, it's easier if you have a treat in your hand. They can smell the difference. And as soon as he sits, I lower it, sit. Remember, say the treat name after, or the command word after the treat goes in the mouth, and tickle him under his chin. We're not always going to give him a treat. If we get in a habit of doing it this, and doing it this way, we can get them to come over whenever we want, and then get them to sit, and then at least they're getting the tickle under their chin. Come. Let me see, what else do we go over? I'm going to show the guardian a leave it exercise, which is a little bit different than what she taught Danny. But use those escalating consequences to disagree. I think they'll be a little bit more effective. Also, the dogs are kind of on a free feeding schedule. I recommend that the guardians go to a structured feeding. I would feed Danny first, then I would feed Louie, and then I would feed Larry last, because he's the newest dog in the bunch. Sit. Passive training. Now, when she goes to eat, Danny is a very finicky eater. She eats kind of when she wants to. I'd feed twice a day for the guardian schedule. So what I would do is go over, give her permission to eat her food, and she eat first. So she walks over and she sniffs her bowl and says, I'm not feeling like eating, and walks away. Pick up the bowl, dump the food out of it, put the empty bowl back down. It's important to put the empty bowl back down. I want the dog, every time she walks by that bowl, she recognizes that it's empty. So it should be able to stay there all the time. And then basically when she gets done, or we dump it or she eats her food, she walks away, we bring in Louie. And Louie gets to eat, and the other dog's not allowed to be within 7 feet of him. And then when he gets done, he walks away, and then we bring in Larry, and Larry gets to eat without the other dogs within 7 feet of him. However, I left out a crucial step. The human needs to eat something first. Now, it doesn't have to be a real meal. Just get a chip or cracker or something, eating 5 more bites. And then after that, then we'd feed her, then Louie, then Larry. And if one of them's only eating, if they're supposed to eat a cup at each meal and they're only eating 80% of the cup, then start feeding them 80% of the cup. We want them to practice finishing their meal completely. Then you start adding a little bit more. Now, Larry is a little bit overweight, as you can see. And so one of the things the Guardian could do is get some fresh green beans. For a dog his size, I would probably get about 4 to 8 of them, long ones, chop them up into little bits and sprinkle them in with his food and reduce his food, whatever the bag says, for his weight by about 10%. The fiber in those will help him feel fuller. And that way you can help that plus increasing his exercise. And that's something we started off by talking about is an exercise journal. So we went over some creative ways to exercise. The Guardian's already familiar with using a laser. She walks the dogs, but she's doing it as one long walk. And they're kind of all over the place on the walk, so the Guardian may want to have us enlist James, our lead trainer, to come back and teach the dogs to walk with a loose leash so she can walk all 3 dogs together. But right now, Danny's the older dog. She doesn't need as much exercise as the 2 younger ones. So maybe the Guardian takes her on a walk around the block, drops her off, then takes the other 2 dogs out for an actual walk. Up. But we can do things to help the dog, put the dog in position to succeed. Off! You want to make that a really rewarding thing. Look at all this great attention I got for getting down. Wow, I didn't think getting off the couch would be such a big deal. But again, just paying attention to when we're petting and how we're petting makes a big difference. So basically, after dropping her off, then the dog needs to take the other 2 dogs out on a walk. Now we can set the dog up for success by exercising them before the walk. Some of the creative ways we came up with, like I said, the laser is one of them. Dropping treats from the top of the stairs to the bottom of the stairs and letting the dog run down. And when it gets down, maybe say lobby every time it licks it up off the floor. And then have it come all the way back to the top stairs and call it penthouse. And then call each one of those as an up down as a 1. And then the first time I would do it with each dog separately, with an empty stomach, I would do it until the dog stops coming up to you and count each up down as 1, so you know what their maximum threshold is. Let's say that Louie's 50. Well, then before a walk, maybe we get him 20 or 30. And exercising your dog before the walk is a great way to set them up for success because they deplete that excess energy. The Guardian said at the end of the walk, the dogs are behaving beautifully. Well, we can achieve that through the walk. Door. Now, this is also a little bit related to not having a lot of rules and structure. So basically, the more that if we can exercise and put the dog in position to succeed, we're going to have much more fun on the walk, and we'll enjoy the walks a lot more. Now, other ways of exercising the dog, set games, you might want to Google that. Let me see, what was the other, and then fetch. They love fetch. So Go Dog Go is the fetching machine that I like to use. I believe the website's go-dog-go.com, something like that. But just Go Dog Go ball fetching. And put it in a place where it can be protected from the elements like under the deck, but that it can still launch the balls. And if you have problems teaching the dogs how to fetch, let me use it, let me know, and we can come up and set up a session to do that. But the dogs love to fetch, they have a dog door. So if they can go outside and fetch when they need exercise, that'd be awesome. Now, I recommend the Guardian start an exercise journal and basically write the name of the date at the top, write each dog's name at the top underneath the date, and write basically in 3 columns. Then write down the time and how long the walk was for each dog, the time and the number of fetches, the time and number of up downs on the stairs, or scent games, or laser revolutions, or whatever it is. And also, if there's anything noteworthy that the dog got on the counter or did something wrong, write those things down and the time and what happened as well. Then at the end of the day, give each dog a letter grade, independent of the other dogs. The next day, play around with the elements. Maybe fetch a couple more times, add a couple repetitions to the exercises. Keep on playing with the elements until they all come up with an A day. Now you know what you need to do to exercise your dog to put it in a position to succeed. Now, the other thing the Guardian might want to do is also practice exercising them before the walk and keep a journal specific for that. So maybe we try 10 up downs and then try the walk. That walk was a B. Okay, next time we do 15 up downs. Wow, that was an A walk. And so we can set them up for success so the dogs can perform well with the Guardian. I also taught the Guardian how to teach the dogs to leave a room. And basically, to leave a room, all you do is just kind of like if he's here and I want him to leave this room, let's say the doorway is right here, I touch the dog's nose, I just toss the treat away. When he walks away and gets it, I say the word out. Same thing I said for here, except for out. What I would do is have 2 treats for every portal or area that you're going to have them go out of, and then walk around the whole house to every doorway with one dog separately, with one dog individually. Toss it out, the dog goes, gets it out, comes back, does it a second time, then go to the next doorway. Do that for all the doorways in the house, and then do the whole thing again, but reverse, going from inside the room to out. I would still call it out. Now with the dog, when we tell the dog to leave the room, any room in the house, it has practice and motivation doing that. Let me see, what else? Hey buddy, sit. Is there anything else I forgot to go over?
I think you got it all.
All right. Now, if I did forget anything, you remember it later on, please call or text me. The number I called you from is my primary cell. Please text me. It's the fastest way to reach me. Sit. Danny, you're such a good girl. See, I should just said sit only. If it's pretty common or very normal to need to make little adjustments in the week or 2 after the session. So please call or text me. I don't charge for that, and I want you to reach out. But I don't care if it's 7 years from now. Please let me know if you have any questions or problems. I don't know what you're chewing there, but he's going nuts at it. So let's go ahead and sum this up. This is Danny, Louie. Hey, buddy, Louie, come here. There we go. You dropped that. I achieved it on my own. There we go. All right, so this is Larry, this is Louie, and this is Danny, and this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything that you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.